She mistook a CEO for the dog walker holding her leash, but that mistake changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into the story. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when Sophie arrived at the park, tugging her golden retriever along for their daily walk. The sun was shining just enough to make the air feel warm, but there was a cool breeze that made the leaves rustle in the trees. Sophie had been coming to this park for years, escaping her busy life and the pressures of her job as a junior marketing assistant at a big company. But today, there was something different in the air. Her dog, Max, was pulling at the leash, eager to explore every corner of the park. Sophie, feeling a little distracted, allowed Max to wander ahead while she checked her phone, wondering if she had missed any important emails. She didn't hear the footsteps approaching until it was almost too late. Sophie's attention snapped up when Max suddenly started barking excitedly at a man walking toward her, holding another dog's leash. She smiled and, thinking nothing of it, approached him. "Hi there, you must be the dog walker, right?" she said, giving him a friendly smile. The man looked up at her in surprise, his sharp features catching the sunlight. His eyes were a soft shade of green, his dark hair neatly styled, and he wore a simple outfit, a button-down shirt and casual jeans. No, I'm not a dog walker," he replied, a hint of amusement in his voice. Sophie blinked in confusion, trying to recover from her mistake. "Oh, I'm sorry," she stammered. "I thought you were just walking the dog for someone." The man chuckled. "It's okay. I get that a lot," he said, gently tugging on the leash as his dog wagged its tail at Max. Sophie laughed awkwardly. "I guess I'm not very good at reading people's outfits." "No worries," he said with a smile. There was a moment of silence as Sophie fidgeted with the leash, still feeling embarrassed. She decided to make a quick exit and try to continue her walk. "Well, I should probably get going," she said, giving a little wave. But as she turned to walk away, the man called out to her. "Hey, wait," he said, taking a few steps closer. "You're Sophie, right?" Sophie paused, her heart racing. "Yes, I am. How did you know my name?" The man grinned. "We actually met a while ago at a marketing event. I'm Liam Parker. I'm a CEO at a tech company." Sophie's jaw dropped, her eyes widening in disbelief. "You're a CEO?" she asked, stammering. Liam nodded, still smiling. "Yes, that's right. I'm the founder of Parker Tech. I guess I don't always look the part when I'm out with my dog." Sophie could hardly believe it. Here she was, thinking she had just made an embarrassing mistake with a simple dog walker, only to discover that the man she had been talking to was a powerful tech entrepreneur. Her mind raced with thoughts of how she had misjudged the situation so quickly. "I never would have guessed," Sophie said, still in shock. "You seem so normal." Liam's smile softened, and he glanced down at the dog. "I get that a lot, but that's the thing about people in my world. Sometimes they forget to just be themselves." Sophie didn't know what to say. Was this a chance encounter or something more? She couldn't shake the feeling that this strange mistake was the start of something life-changing. As they exchanged a few more words about their dogs and life in general, Sophie couldn't help but feel a strange pull in her chest. This unexpected meeting had shaken her in ways she didn't fully understand yet. She glanced at Liam one last time before he waved goodbye and walked off, his dog happily trotting beside him. As Sophie continued her walk through the park, her thoughts swirled around the encounter. Was she really just another person in a sea of faces? Or could there be something more to this unexpected connection? The truth was, Sophie had no idea what would happen next, but she had the strong feeling that this was only the beginning. I was left standing in the middle of the park, the cool breeze brushing against my face as I tried to process what had just happened. A CEO, Liam Parker, the man I had mistaken for a dog walker, was actually a powerful tech entrepreneur. My mind kept replaying the moment, and I couldn't help but feel like I'd missed something important. Was this encounter just a strange coincidence? Or was there something deeper to it? As I continued walking Max, my golden retriever, I found myself glancing over my shoulder, half expecting Liam to turn back around and say something. But he didn't. He just continued walking with his dog, disappearing into the distance. Despite everything, I couldn't shake the feeling that our brief interaction had meant something. A few days later, while I was at work, my phone buzzed with a notification. I glanced at it, thinking it was just another work email, but my heart skipped a beat when I saw the name. Liam Parker. The email was brief. Sophie, it was nice meeting you at the park. I wanted to extend an invitation to a networking event we're hosting this weekend. I think you'd be a great fit. Let me know if you're interested. Best, Liam. I stared at the screen, unsure of what to make of it. Why would a CEO want to invite someone like me, a junior marketing assistant, to an event like this? I barely knew the guy, and I was certain he had other, more important people in mind for this kind of thing. But still, the invitation was tempting. I had never been one to back down from an opportunity, especially when it could help my career. So, after much hesitation, I decided to reply. Hi Liam, thank you for the invite. I'd be honored to attend. Looking forward to it. Best, Sophie. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. I couldn't stop thinking about the event and what it might mean for me. I had always felt like I was stuck in a rut, working a job I wasn't passionate about, trying to make ends meet while struggling to find a way to stand out in a crowded job market. The networking event was my chance to make a change. As I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my dress and checking my reflection, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew this could be the opportunity I had been waiting for. The event was held at an upscale venue, a modern building with glass walls that offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline. As I walked in, I felt out of place among the sea of well-dressed professionals. I could feel their eyes on me, judging me, questioning my presence, but I pushed those thoughts aside. I was here for a reason. I had worked too hard to let my insecurities take over. Liam was already there, standing near the bar, surrounded by a group of people. He was dressed in a tailored suit, looking every bit the part of the successful CEO that he was. He caught my eye as soon as I entered, and a small smile crept across his face. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether to approach him or not. But then, before I could make up my mind, he walked toward me, his confident steps echoing in the quiet room. Sophie, he said, his voice warm and inviting. I'm glad you could make it. I smiled, feeling a flutter in my chest. Thank you for inviting me, Liam. This place is incredible, he chuckled. It's nothing compared to the work we're doing, but I'm glad you like it. We talked for a few more minutes, and soon I found myself in a conversation with some of the most influential people in the industry. Despite my nerves, I held my own. Liam's presence had a calming effect on me, and I found myself relaxed in a way I hadn't expected. As the night wore on, I began to notice the way Liam looked at me. It wasn't just casual or friendly, it was something more. The way his gaze lingered on me, the small smiles he gave me, the way he seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. I couldn't help but feel a connection between us, one that went beyond a simple networking event. But I didn't let myself get carried away. I was here for business, not romance. Still, as I left the event that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that Liam was more than just a CEO. There was something deeper, something I hadn't yet figured out. As I got into my car and started driving home, my thoughts raced. Was it possible that this was just a strange coincidence? Or was it the start of something more? I didn't know, but I had a strong feeling that my life was about to change in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. As the days passed since the networking event, Sophie found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Her encounter with Liam Parker had been nothing short of unexpected. What had started as a simple mistake, mistaking him for a dog walker, had now turned into something that she couldn't quite put her finger on. She had barely slept the night after the event, her mind racing with questions. What did it all mean? Was Liam just being polite, or was there something more to his attention? She kept thinking back to the way his eyes lingered on her, the way he seemed genuinely interested in her words. It wasn't just a business connection. It felt like something else was brewing beneath the surface. Sophie decided to focus on work for a while to clear her head, but it wasn't easy. Every time she glanced at her phone, she half expected a message from Liam, but it never came. Until one morning, about a week later, she opened her inbox to find an email from him again. The subject line simply read, "Let's grab coffee." She read it twice, just to make sure she wasn't imagining things. It was a short and to-the-point message. "Sophie, I'd love to continue our conversation. Let me know when you're free for coffee this week. Looking forward to catching up." Her heart skipped a beat. The message felt casual, yet the way he phrased it made her feel like there was something deeper. Sophie knew she couldn't ignore it. She quickly replied, setting up a time for the following day at a cafe near her apartment. The next day, Sophie arrived early, trying her best to calm her nerves. She hadn't expected to feel this way. It was just coffee, right? But this was Liam Parker, the CEO of a tech empire, not some random acquaintance. When he walked in, dressed casually, in a crisp button-down and jeans, he looked completely different from the last time she saw him in that formal suit at the event. His smile when he saw her was warm, disarming, and genuine. "Sophie, it's good to see you again," Liam said as he took a seat across from her. "Thanks for meeting me." Sophie smiled nervously. "Of course, I'm glad you reached out." They started talking about work, as expected, but soon the conversation shifted. "So tell me," Liam said, leaning in slightly, "how have you been? I know things must be a bit hectic with your job." Sophie chuckled, feeling a bit of relief that he wasn't just asking about business. "It's been okay," she replied. "I'm still trying to figure out what comes next. I'm just stuck in this routine, you know." Liam nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I get that. Sometimes it's hard to see a way out when you're in the middle of it all. But I think you've got more potential than you realize." Sophie blinked, surprised by his words. She hadn't expected him to be so encouraging, especially after knowing her for such a short time. "Thank you," she said, genuinely touched. "It's nice to hear that." For the next hour, they chatted about everything from work to their personal lives. Sophie found herself opening up to him in a way she hadn't with anyone else in a long time. There was something about Liam that made her feel comfortable. Something that made her want to share her hopes and dreams. But just as she was starting to feel at ease, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Liam than he was letting on. There was something in his eyes, something that spoke of a deeper longing. He was successful, yes, but he wasn't the picture of a perfect, content life. Sophie could sense that. As they finished their coffee, Liam leaned back in his chair, his gaze lingering on her. "I'm glad we could meet like this," he said softly. "I've been thinking about our last conversation, and I believe you've got a lot of untapped potential. If you ever want to take the leap and join something bigger than yourself, I have an opportunity that could be a great fit for you." Sophie's heart raced. She hadn't expected him to make such an offer, especially after such a casual meeting. "What kind of opportunity?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam smiled, his eyes locking with hers. "I'm starting a new project that focuses on innovative marketing strategies. I could use someone with your talents. But it's not just about the work. It's about creating something meaningful together." Sophie didn't know what to say. The offer sounded incredible, but at the same time, it was overwhelming. Could she really take a chance like that? Could she work with someone like Liam Parker, a CEO, and succeed? Her mind raced, but all she could do was nod. "I'd like that," she said quietly. "I'd like that a lot." Liam's smile widened, and for the first time since they'd met, Sophie saw a flicker of something more in his eyes. Something that made her believe that maybe, just maybe, this strange encounter would lead her to more than just a career opportunity. It could lead her to a future she never imagined. As they said their goodbyes and parted ways, Sophie felt a sense of anticipation building inside her. She wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but she knew that her life was about to change in ways she could never have predicted. The days that followed her coffee meeting with Liam felt like a blur to Sophie. She found herself caught between excitement and doubt. On one hand, the opportunity he presented was exactly what she had been waiting for, a chance to break free from the monotonous routine of her current job and take a risk that could potentially change everything. On the other hand, the weight of the decision was starting to feel heavier with each passing day. Was she really ready for this? Could she work alongside someone like Liam, a CEO of a successful tech company? The thought made her nervous, but at the same time, she couldn't deny the spark of excitement she felt at the idea of something more. She spent the next week pondering it, her mind racing with possibilities. She didn't tell anyone about the offer. It felt too personal, too big to share. Her friends and family would have questions, and she wasn't sure she had all the answers. The opportunity felt too perfect, almost unreal. The next Saturday, as promised, Liam sent her an invitation to a meeting at his company's headquarters. She arrived early, her nerves making her hands shake slightly as she walked through the sleek, modern lobby of Parker Tech. The building itself was everything she imagined, a tech company to be glass walls, futuristic designs, and a clean, minimalistic aesthetic that screamed success. When the receptionist told her that Liam was waiting for her, her heart skipped a beat. The meeting was short, but intense. Liam walked her through the vision of the project he wanted her to join, explaining in detail how her skills could be the perfect match for what he needed. It was clear he believed in her potential, and his enthusiasm was infectious. Sophie listened intently, her mind absorbing every word. The project was a marketing initiative that focused on innovative strategies to engage younger audiences. It was bold, it was different, and it was exactly the kind of work she had always wanted to do. As the meeting came to a close, Liam stood up and extended his hand. "So, what do you think?" he asked, his voice calm but expectant. Sophie felt a knot in her stomach, but she knew the answer. She had spent too long waiting for a chance like this. "I think I'm ready," she said, shaking his hand firmly. Liam's smile widened, and for a moment, Sophie saw a flicker of pride in his eyes. "Great," he said, his voice warm. "You won't regret this." As she left the building, Sophie's heart raced. She had made her decision. She was going to take the leap. Over the next few weeks, Sophie dove headfirst into the new project. She worked closely with Liam and his team, and though the work was challenging, she found herself thriving in the fast-paced environment. Liam's leadership style was hands-on, and he always made sure to check in on her progress, offering advice and encouragement. It wasn't long before she began to feel a deeper connection to him, not just as a colleague, but as someone she could trust. Sophie had never expected to feel this way about a CEO, especially not one who seemed so focused and driven. But there was something about Liam. He wasn't just the powerful businessman everyone thought he was. He had a vulnerability about him that he rarely showed others. It became clear to Sophie that his life wasn't as perfect as it seemed. He was driven, yes, but he was also lonely, carrying the weight of his company's success on his shoulders. There were moments when he let his guard down, moments when he would talk about the pressure he felt, and Sophie couldn't help but empathize with him. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult meeting, Sophie found herself alone with Liam in his office. He was leaning against his desk, looking out the window at the city below. "I sometimes wonder if all of this is worth it," he said, his voice softer than usual. Sophie hesitated for a moment before responding. "It's a lot of pressure, isn't it?" she said quietly. Liam nodded, his gaze still fixed on the skyline. "Sometimes I feel like I'm losing touch with everything that matters," he confessed. "I've sacrificed a lot to get here." Sophie could see the weight in his eyes, the exhaustion he rarely allowed anyone to see. She had always admired Liam for his success, but in that moment, she saw him as more than just a CEO. He was a man who had worked tirelessly to build his empire, but at what cost? Sophie felt an unexpected surge of compassion for him. "You don't have to do it all alone," she said softly. Liam turned to look at her, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart skip. "I don't know if I can do this without help," he admitted, his voice low. "I've built this company, but sometimes I wonder if I've lost sight of what's really important." There was a pause, a moment of vulnerability that neither of them expected. Sophie stepped closer, her voice steady. "Maybe it's time to find a balance," she said. "Success is important, but it shouldn't come at the cost of your happiness." Liam's expression softened, and for the first time, he looked at her not as a colleague, but as someone who truly understood him. The tension between them was palpable, but it wasn't just about business anymore. It was something deeper, something more personal. Sophie knew that the path ahead was uncertain, but in that moment, she felt a shift. Her decision to take a chance on Liam and the project wasn't just about career growth. It was about finding something real, something that went beyond the corporate world and the masks people wore. As they stood there, a silent understanding passed between them. Sophie realized that whatever came next, she wasn't just in it for the job, she was in it for something more. She was in it for the chance to build something meaningful with Liam, both in business and in life. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind for Sophie. As she threw herself into the new project, her relationship with Liam began to shift. At first, it was all about work. They spent countless hours together, brainstorming marketing strategies and working late into the night. Liam, the CEO, always kept a calm, collected demeanor. But Sophie started to see glimpses of a different side of him. It wasn't just about the business anymore. There were moments when their conversations veered away from work, and Sophie found herself laughing at his dry humor, something she hadn't expected from a man so driven by success. As the weeks passed, Sophie realized that she was starting to care for him in ways she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just admiration for his business acumen, it was deeper than that. She found herself thinking about him outside of work, wondering how he spent his days when he wasn't building an empire. She realized that despite all the success he had achieved, Liam was still just a person, struggling with the same questions about life, love, and purpose as anyone else. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Sophie was heading out when Liam called her into his office. "Sophie, I need to talk to you about something," he said, his voice more serious than usual. "Of course," Sophie replied, her heart picking up speed. She walked into his office and took a seat across from him, her eyes meeting his as he sat down, looking thoughtful. "I've been thinking a lot lately," Liam began, his voice quieter than usual. "I've always focused on my work, on building this company. But the more time we've spent together, the more I've realized I've been neglecting other parts of my life." Sophie felt a lump form in her throat. She had a feeling this conversation wasn't just about business. "Liam, what are you saying?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam ran a hand through his hair, a rare sign of vulnerability. "I'm saying that I've been so focused on building something that I've forgotten what really matters. I've been pushing people away, keeping them at arm's length. But you—" He stopped himself and cleared his throat. "But you've made me see things differently. You've made me realize that success isn't just about business." Sophie sat in stunned silence, her mind racing. Did he just admit that he had feelings for her? Was this more than just a professional relationship? She looked down, trying to process what he was saying, but her heart was already racing. "Liam, she started, but he cut her off. "I know this might be sudden, and I'm not asking for anything right now, but I wanted to be honest with you. I care about you, Sophie, and I don't want to lose that, no matter where this goes." Sophie's breath caught in her throat. This was everything she had been afraid to admit, everything she had been trying to ignore. She had grown so close to him, and yet she didn't know if she was ready for this kind of relationship. The pressure, the expectations, would it work? She had spent so much time questioning herself and her place in this new world, and now she was faced with a question that went beyond career. "Liam," she said softly, finally meeting his eyes. "I care about you too. I'm scared. I'm not sure if I'm ready for all of this." Liam smiled gently, his eyes full of understanding. "I know, and I'm not rushing you. But I didn't want to hide how I feel anymore. I think we both deserve to have something real, something that's not just about our jobs or success." Sophie's heart swelled at his words. She had never expected to hear him speak so openly, so honestly. The walls that had always surrounded him seemed to be coming down, and for the first time, Sophie felt like they were on the same level. "I'm scared too," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "But I'm willing to take the chance, if you are." Liam's smile widened, and for the first time, Sophie saw the man behind the title. The person who had been hiding his own fears, his own vulnerabilities. "I am," he said softly. "I'm willing to take that chance too." From that moment on, everything changed. Sophie and Liam's relationship blossomed, not just as colleagues, but as something deeper. They supported each other, not just in the office, but in their personal lives as well. Sophie found herself feeling more confident than she ever had before, not just in her career, but in her own ability to love and be loved. And as for Liam, he discovered that success wasn't just about business. It was about finding balance, about taking risks, and about letting someone in. Together, they built something greater than any business. Venture, something real. It wasn't always easy, but every step of the way, they knew they had each other to lean on. And with each passing day, Sophie realized that the leap she had taken, both in her career and in her personal life, was the best decision she had ever made. The weeks that followed felt like a dream for Sophie. She and Liam had become a strong team, both professionally and personally. They worked side by side, building their project from the ground up, and with each success, they grew closer. Sophie couldn't help but feel like she was living a life she had always wanted but never imagined she would actually get. She had a career she was passionate about, a connection with someone she deeply admired, and a newfound confidence in herself. Everything was falling into place, but Sophie soon realized that this newfound happiness came with its own set of challenges. One late afternoon, as she was leaving the office, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Liam. "We need to talk." The message was simple, but it made her heart race. She immediately tried to reach him, but he didn't answer his phone. Sophie's mind raced with possibilities. What could this be about? Had something gone wrong with the project? Or was this about their relationship? She didn't know, but she couldn't shake the sense of dread that started to settle in her stomach. She walked back to the office, her thoughts consumed by worry. When she arrived, Liam was standing by his office window, looking out over the city, deep in thought. The moment he saw her, he turned, his expression unreadable. "Sophie, we need to have an honest conversation," he said softly. Sophie's heart sank. This didn't sound like the Liam she had come to know, the confident, encouraging CEO. This sounded different. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. Liam took a deep breath and walked over to her, his eyes never leaving hers. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything," he said, his voice low. "And I realized something. We've been so focused on our work, on building this project, that I think I've been avoiding something important." Sophie's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Liam's expression softened, and he reached out to gently take her hands in his. "Sophie, I care about you more than just as a colleague or a business partner. I think you know that by now." Sophie nodded, her heart skipping a beat. "I care about you too," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Liam smiled, but there was a sadness in his eyes. "But there's something I haven't told you. I've been so focused on my work, on running the company, that I've neglected everything else. I've been holding back from you, from us, and I don't want to do that anymore." Sophie felt a mixture of relief and fear. She had known something was holding Liam back, but hearing it from him made it real. "I understand, Liam," she said softly. "But what does this mean for us? Are you saying we should stop?" Liam shook his head quickly. No, that's not what I'm saying at all," he said, his voice growing more urgent. "I want us to be real, Sophie. I want to let go of the walls I've built up. But I need to know that we're on the same page. I don't want to rush into anything, but I don't want to hold back either." Sophie looked into his eyes, feeling a deep connection to him in that moment. She could see the vulnerability he was finally letting show, the man who had been hiding behind his title for so long. And she knew that what they had together was worth the risk, worth the uncertainty. "Liam," she said, her voice firm, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. I want to build something with you, both in work and in life." Liam's face softened, and a genuine smile spread across his face. "You don't know how much that means to me," he said quietly. Sophie smiled back, a weight lifting off her shoulders. "I know we have a lot to figure out," she said, "but we're in this together." They stood there for a moment, holding each other's gaze, the city lights twinkling in the distance. It was as though the world around them had paused, giving them a moment to just be. Liam reached out and brushed a lock of hair from Sophie's face. "I'm glad you're in my life," he said, his voice sincere. "I can't imagine doing this without you." Sophie felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She had come into this situation unsure of what the future held, but now, for the first time, she felt certain. She wasn't just part of a business venture. She was part of something real. They had built a connection that went beyond work, beyond titles and expectations. It was about trust, honesty, and a shared vision for the future. As they stood there in the quiet of the office, Sophie knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but they had already proven that they could overcome anything if they worked as a team, and that was enough for Sophie. For the first time in a long while, She felt like she had found her place, not just in her career, but in Liam's world as well. The following morning, Sophie arrived at the office feeling a mix of anticipation and unease. Ever since her conversation with Liam, she had sensed a shift in their dynamic. But today, something felt different. As she walked through the sleek lobby of Parker Tech, her footsteps echoed against the polished floors, and the scent of fresh coffee wafted from the small cafe in the corner. She clutched her bag tightly, trying to steady the fluttering in her stomach. She had no idea what awaited her, but an unshakable sense of tension lingered in the air. As she reached her office floor, she noticed Liam standing near the glass-walled conference room, speaking quietly to someone she did not recognize. His posture was rigid, his expression unusually serious, a stark contrast to the calm warmth he usually exuded. Sophie's heart skipped a beat. Something was wrong. Before she could step closer, the unfamiliar man turned, revealing himself to be a prominent investor who had flown in from out of state. Sophie had met him briefly at the networking event, and she knew his reputation for being both highly perceptive and unforgiving in business matters. Liam's voice was steady, but there was an edge she had never heard before. "I need you to understand the full scope of this project," he said firmly. "It is high stakes. There is no room for error." Sophie swallowed hard, suddenly feeling the weight of expectation pressing down on her. The investor nodded, surveying the room, and Sophie could sense the tension rising like a storm cloud about to break. When the investor left, Liam turned to her, his eyes softening for a fleeting moment, but the tight line of his jaw remained. "Sophie, we have a challenge ahead," he said quietly. "It is going to test everything we have worked for, and I need you to be prepared. I need you to trust me and the process completely." Sophie nodded, unsure of whether she was more excited or anxious. As the day progressed, she was thrown into a whirlwind of back-to-back meetings, data analysis sessions, and creative planning. Every decision felt monumental, every strategy scrutinized under a microscope. She could feel the pressure mounting, not just from the project itself, but from the high expectations that Liam and the team held for her. Midway through the afternoon, she found herself alone in the small break room, staring out the window at the bustling city below. Her thoughts raced as she tried to make sense of the intensity of the day. She realized that the stakes were higher than she had imagined, not just for the project, but for her own self-confidence and sense of capability. Suddenly, her phone buzzed with a message from Liam. "Meet me in the conference room in 15 minutes. I want to go over something important." Sophie's heart raced. She quickly composed herself and headed to the room. Liam was already there, reviewing documents, his brow furrowed with focus. When he looked up and saw her, he gestured for her to sit. "Sophie, I want to be honest with you," he began. "This project is going to push you in ways you may not expect. It is not just about strategy or creativity. It is about how you handle pressure, make decisions, and navigate challenges that seem impossible. But I also believe you are capable of rising to this occasion. I have seen your potential, and I am confident that you can handle this." Sophie felt a swell of both fear and determination. She realized that Liam's words were not just encouragement, they were a call to action, a test of her resolve. She nodded, letting the weight of the responsibility settle into her mind. For the rest of the afternoon, they worked together closely, dissecting potential scenarios and preparing for contingencies. Liam was meticulous, pointing out details she might have missed, and offering guidance without condescension. Sophie absorbed everything, her mind sharp and focused despite the lingering nerves. By the time the office lights dimmed, Sophie felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The challenge was daunting, but she knew that with Liam's guidance, she could face it head-on. As they left the office together, Liam paused and looked at her with a rare softness. "I know today was intense," he said, "but I want you to remember that we are in this together. Whatever happens, you are not alone." Sophie smiled, feeling a renewed sense of confidence. She understood that this was more than a project or a test of her skills, it was a journey of trust, growth, and partnership. And as they walked out into the crisp evening air, she felt ready to face whatever challenges awaited them next. As the weeks passed, Sophie and Liam's partnership continued to grow stronger, both professionally and personally. The project that had initially felt like an overwhelming challenge was starting to show signs of success. Their team had come together in ways that Sophie hadn't imagined possible, and their innovative marketing strategy was starting to take shape. The more they worked together, the more Sophie realized how much she had come to rely on Liam not just as a business partner, but as someone who had become an integral part of her life. They shared late nights at the office, brainstorming ideas, refining strategies, and finding new ways to push the boundaries of what they could achieve. And through it all, there was a sense of camaraderie, a bond that had deepened beyond the walls of the office. Yet, even as the project moved forward, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. There were moments, quiet moments when they were alone, that made her question whether the connection between her and Liam was purely professional, or if there was something more at play. Liam was a constant presence in her thoughts, even when they weren't together. She began to wonder if she was ready to take the next step in their relationship, to move beyond the unspoken boundaries they had created for the sake of their work. It wasn't that she didn't care about him, she did. It was the uncertainty of what a relationship with someone like Liam would mean. He was powerful, ambitious, and always in control. But Sophie had seen the vulnerability beneath his exterior, and she knew that whatever they decided, they needed to be honest with each other. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, they found themselves standing together in front of the office building, the city lights casting a soft glow around them. The air was cool, and the quiet hum of the city was a gentle backdrop to their conversation. Sophie could feel the weight of her thoughts pressing down on her, and as much as she tried to focus on the work they had accomplished, her mind kept circling back to the question she had been avoiding. "Liam," she began, her voice quieter than usual. "Can we talk about something?" Liam turned to her, his expression softening. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Sophie hesitated for a moment, trying to gather her thoughts. "I've been thinking a lot lately," she said, her heart pounding in her chest. "About us. About everything we've built together." Liam's eyes locked onto hers, his gaze steady but filled with curiosity. "What do you mean?" he asked gently. Sophie took a deep breath. "I know we've been focused on this project, and that's been amazing, but I think I'm ready to talk about where we go from here. I don't want to just be a colleague to you, Liam. I don't want to hide behind the work anymore." The silence that followed felt heavy, and for a moment, Sophie wondered if she had made a mistake, if maybe the timing wasn't right, if the risks outweighed the potential rewards. But then Liam spoke, his voice low and sincere. "Sophie, I've been thinking the same thing. I care about you. I've tried to keep things professional, but I can't deny how much you mean to me. I want more than just this project. I want more than just work. I want to be with you, if you'll have me." Sophie's heart swelled at his words. She had been afraid of this moment, afraid that her feelings might not be reciprocated, afraid that the complexity of their relationship would drive them apart. But now, standing there in front of him, all of her fears seemed to fade. "I want that too, Liam," she said, her voice steady. "I don't want to keep pretending that everything is just business. We've built something real here, something that goes beyond work. And I think it's time we acknowledge that." Liam reached for her hand, his touch warm and comforting. "I'm glad you feel that way," he said, his smile genuine and full of relief. "I've been afraid that this would ruin everything, that taking this step might jeopardize what we've worked so hard for. But the truth is, I don't want to keep living in fear. I want us to be real, together." Sophie nodded, her heart beating faster. "Me too," she whispered. As they stood there, hand in hand, the city lights flickering in the distance, they both realized that this was just the beginning. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be theirs to walk together. They had already proven that they could face challenges head-on, both in their careers and in their personal lives. And now, they were ready to take the next step into a future where they weren't just colleagues, but partners in every sense of the word. They didn't have all the answers, but they knew one thing for sure. They were ready to find out what came next, together. The weeks that followed marked the beginning of a new chapter for Sophie and Liam. Their decision to pursue something real beyond work didn't just change their relationship, it transformed the way they saw their lives, their futures, and each other. They continued to build their successful project together, but now there was a sense of partnership in everything they did. The late nights at the office no longer felt like an obligation, but a shared mission. The challenges they faced were no longer burdens they had to carry alone, but hurdles they tackled as a team. Sophie was thriving in ways she had never imagined. She felt more confident, more empowered, and, for the first time, she believed in her own potential without hesitation. The more she worked with Liam, the more she saw him not just as a CEO, but as someone who deeply cared about the people around him. The vulnerability he had shown her that night in his office wasn't just a passing moment, it was a glimpse into the real Liam Parker, the one who was more than just a successful businessman. And as much as Sophie admired his professional success, it was his kindness, his ability to listen, and his willingness to open up that drew her closer to him every day. Their relationship blossomed naturally, with no rush or pressure. They spent their weekends exploring the city together, sometimes quietly walking through the park, sometimes enjoying spontaneous adventures that left them laughing until their stomachs hurt. It wasn't perfect, no relationship ever is, but it felt genuine. They had created something that wasn't built on expectations or superficial connections, but on mutual respect and understanding. One Saturday evening, as the city skyline glittered in the distance, Sophie found herself sitting next to Liam on the rooftop of their building. The air was warm, but a soft breeze ruffled their hair as they leaned against the railing, watching the world below. Sophie turned to him, her heart full. "You know, when I first joined the team, I never imagined things would turn out like this," she said, her voice soft. Liam smiled, his hand gently brushing hers. "Neither did I, but sometimes life surprises us in the best ways." There was a pause, and then Sophie spoke again, her words weighed with meaning. "I've never felt more at peace with my life than I do now. With you, with the work we're doing, with the way everything is falling into place." Liam's gaze softened, and he looked out at the city. "I feel the same way," he said quietly. "I never thought I'd find someone who understands me the way you do. Someone who challenges me, but also helps me see things in a different light. I think that's what I've been looking for all along." Sophie smiled, her heart swelling. She had never imagined that a simple mistake, a mistaken identity in a park, would lead her to this moment. She had started out looking for something, but what she had found was more than she ever expected. It wasn't just a career change. It was a life change. Liam turned to face her fully, his eyes searching hers. "Sophie, I want to take the next step with you, not just in business, but in life. I know we've already made some big decisions, but this feels like the right time to make another one." Sophie's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she couldn't speak. She had no idea what he was about to say, but she already knew that whatever it was, it would be something that changed their lives forever. "What do you mean?" she whispered, her heart racing. Liam reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. He opened it, revealing a simple yet elegant ring, sparkling in the soft light of the evening. "Sophie, will you marry me?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Sophie's eyes filled with tears as she looked at him, at the man who had shown her more kindness and love than she ever thought she deserved. This wasn't just a business partnership or a fleeting romance. It was a promise that no matter what challenges they faced, they would face them together. "Yes," she whispered, barely able to contain the overwhelming joy that filled her. "Yes, I will marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Sophie felt a sense of peace wash over her. The future was still uncertain, but in that moment, with Liam by her side, she knew they would navigate it together. Whatever came next, they would face it as partners, not just in work, but in life. They had already built something incredible together, and now they were ready to build an even brighter future. And with that, Sophie realized that the life she had once dreamed of was no longer a distant hope, it was a reality. A reality she would share with the man she loved, the man who had shown her that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with a simple mistake.